You know how it is, you want the crucial information, but maybe without getting totally lost in the daily deluge.
Yeah, exactly.
Think of this as your streamlined route to understanding some of the most significant things that have unfolded this week.
That's right. We've been digging into the latest reports from the Observer Group newspapers of Southern California, their April 2nd, 2025 edition.
Hmm.
And what's striking is really the breadth of what they're covering. From major shifts in the corporate world, changes within our cultural institutions,
Right.
to really impactful stories of individual initiative and significant movements in the political landscape.
Exactly. So we're going to distill 5 key areas for you. First, we'll look at the considerable backlash a major retailer is facing after making some, well, notable changes to their DEI efforts.
Okay.
Then we'll look at a pretty controversial executive order, this one focused on how American history is presented at the Smithsonian.
Mm.
We also have an inspiring story about a student making a tangible difference through community involvement. News of the passing of a very influential former congresswoman.
Yeah, that was sad news.
And finally, a new federal voting law that's already stirring significant debate. Our aim is just to extract the essential insights from each of these so you come away with, hopefully, a clearer and more informed perspective.
Sounds good.
Okay, let's unpack this, starting with a situation that's generating a lot of discussion, particularly in the business world.
And that's the unfolding story at Target. It appears their recent adjustments to their diversity, equity, and inclusion, or, DEI initiatives, have had some pretty significant financial and reputational consequences.
Right.
The immediate figures that just jump out are the over $12.4 billion in revenue they've reportedly lost,
Wow.
along with a $27.27 drop in their stock price per share. That's a really concrete impact for a company that size, suggesting, considerable investor concern.
Absolutely. And it's not just about the numbers, is it?
Hmm.
We see a really robust response from various organizations and community leaders. Reverend Jamal Bryant initiated a national fast,
Mm-hmm.
and both the National Newspaper Publishers Association, NNPA, and the NAACP have launched public awareness campaigns, even advocating for selective purchasing.
Right. Benjamin F. Chavis Jr. of the NNPA made a strong statement, didn't he? Noting that Black consumers played a vital role in Target's growth and are now making their concerns known.
Yeah, it really highlights the intensity of the reaction.
What's particularly interesting now is we're seeing data that seems to back this up. Numerator, a data analytics firm, found that Black and Hispanic households are indeed reducing their visits to Target at the highest rates compared to other groups.
Okay.
And furthermore, Placer.ai, which tracks foot traffic, reported an 11% decline in visits on the day of a nationally recognized Blackout Day.
An 11% decline, wow.
Yeah. And even looking at the broader trend since Target's DEI changes back in late January, their overall foot traffic has seen a pretty consistent decline.
Which creates a really interesting contrast when we think about how another major retailer, Costco, handled similar pressures, right?
Exactly. They actually rejected a shareholder proposal aimed at weakening their DEI programs
Right.
and have maintained a really firm stance on their commitment, and it seems to be reflected in their performance. Their stock actually outperformed both Target
Yep.
and even Walmart,
Oh, interesting.
which also saw a dip in foot traffic, though maybe not as significant as Target. So you have these two very different approaches and seemingly different outcomes.
Yeah, definitely different outcomes.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, something Braden King from Northwestern University pointed out becomes really relevant. He emphasized the potential long-term reputational damage
Hmm.
that can result from these kinds of decisions and how closely consumer trust is linked to a company's reputation. It suggests the impact might extend beyond immediate boycotts. It could affect how consumers view and interact with the Target brand over time.
And it's worth noting, too, that while all this was happening, Target also faced a series of unrelated product recalls earlier this year.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
We're talking about quite a range of items. Gerber Soothe and Chew teething sticks, Doral Safety First car seats, Newbie stroller fans, Baby Joy high chairs, even Chomps beef and turkey sticks, and Pearl Milling Company pancake mix.
Quite a list. It just adds another layer of complexity, doesn't it, to the challenges they've been navigating.
Definitely.
It certainly does. And Reverend Bryant's efforts, they seem to be gaining traction. We're hearing reports of over 150,000 participants in the fast.
Wow, 150,000.
And more than 100 Black-owned businesses that have reportedly withdrawn their products from Target's shelves. His emphasis on the need for sustained attention is crucial here, suggesting this isn't just a momentary outcry, but a call for, ongoing engagement and accountability.
Okay, so let's shift gears now to a really significant development, this one in the political and cultural sphere. This next story concerns President Trump's recent executive order specifically targeting the Smithsonian Institution, including the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Okay.
This feels like it could represent a really fundamental shift in how American history is presented nationally.
Indeed. The central action here is this executive order with the stated goal of eliminating what the administration calls divisive race-centered ideology from the Smithsonian.
Right.
The very title of the order, Restoring Truth and Sanity to American History, signals a clear perspective.
It certainly does.
The document explicitly states that these museums should primarily serve as centers for learning, rather than engaging in what it calls ideological indoctrination or divisive narratives.
Right. And this isn't just a suggestion, is it? The order directs Vice President Vance and other officials to actively work to prevent federal funding
Yeah, actively block funding.
from going to any exhibitions or programs seen to, and I'm quoting here, degrade shared American values, divide Americans based on race, or promote programs or ideologies inconsistent with federal law and policy. That's a pretty broad directive.
It is very broad, and its scope extends beyond just the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Yeah.
The order also specifically mentions the American Women's History Museum,
Okay.
and it includes a directive against recognizing men as women within its exhibitions or programs. Plus, it calls for appointing new citizen members to the Smithsonian Board of Regents who'd be expected to, well, enforce the president's vision.
And it's really important to see this action within the context of other steps the administration has taken.
Absolutely.
We're seeing a broader trend here, dismantling DEI initiatives across federal agencies, significant cuts to programs like the National Endowment for the Arts Challenge America Initiative, even things like the reported removal of Navajo Code Talker stories from the Pentagon website, the demolition of a Black Lives Matter mural, and bans on Black History Month observances at military base schools. It really suggests a comprehensive approach.
Yeah, a consistent pattern.
Right.
If we consider the broader implications, the potential impact on how institutions treat historically sensitive topics like, say, Confederate monuments and other symbols, that's certainly a question worth asking.
Perfectly.
Samuel Redman, a historian, made a really significant point about the Smithsonian's long history of consistent federal funding and support, and how this executive order basically shatters that established precedent.
He did, and it makes you think about the core mission of the Smithsonian, doesn't it? That famous phrase, increasing and diffusing knowledge.
Right.
This order seems to directly challenge that foundational principle by potentially limiting the scope of what knowledge is presented and how. And that quote, attributed to an anonymous Smithsonian staffer, really stands out. This is about power. They're not hiding it anymore.
Yeah, that says a lot. It speaks volumes about the perceived intent behind this order.
It certainly does. It raises a fundamental question about who gets to define shared American values and what happens when that definition is applied in a way that might marginalize or even erase certain perspectives and historical experiences.
Yeah, a very critical question.
Let's move now, though, to a more positive story, focusing on T.J. Simpson and his involvement with the #Californians for All College Corps program. This is a really compelling example of a student who's not only getting invaluable hands-on experience, but also making a tangible positive impact in his community.
Absolutely. TJ is a third-year student at CSU Chico, majoring in Parks and Recreation Management. He's a first-generation college student from Southern California, and his deep appreciation for nature really comes from his great-grandmother's influence.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, his aspirations to become a park ranger, and the College Corps program is proving to be a really valuable stepping stone for him.
For those who might not know, the #Californians for All College Corps program connects undergrad students with service opportunities, right? Addressing critical needs across California.
Exactly. Focusing on areas like education, climate action, food insecurity. It's kind of a win-win. Students get real-world experience, a chance to contribute, and even help reduce their student debt through stipends and awards.
That's great.
What's interesting about TJ's journey with the program is he actually joined as a freshman, but then stepped away, feeling it wasn't quite the right fit then.
Okay.
It was later, through his field school experiences in his major, that he realized how College Corps could directly complement his studies by providing practical, hands-on work in the very field he's passionate about, parks and rec.
So he came back to it. And it sounds like the program has been incredibly beneficial for his development. He's been able to network with professionals in parks and conservation,
Right, build those connection.
develop crucial leadership skills,
Right.
and even enhance his adaptability and problem solving. He mentioned that navigating transportation, which can be a challenge, taught him to find creative solutions.
Yeah, and what's particularly noteworthy is his progression within the College Corps. He's now taken on significant leadership roles, even serving as a program ambassador. That really reflects his commitment and the confidence the program has in him.
That's impressive. And for TJ, as a black student pursuing a career in a field that has, traditionally been predominantly white, representation is a really significant factor.
Hugely important.
He's spoken about feeling a sense of maybe not belonging in the past. Being a College Corps fellow has empowered him to share his passion, and he hopes to be a role model for other black students interested in climate and environmental careers.
That's fantastic.
Mm.
If we look at the broader impact, College Corps offers some really compelling advantages. Valuable training, networking opportunities, professional development, and significant financial help up to $10,000 for 450 hours of service.
$10,000, that's substantial.
It is. It's clearly a powerful program for students like TJ. And for anyone listening who wants more info, the website is www.ckcollegecorps.com.
Great. Now, turning to some somber news, this week brought the announcement of the passing of former Congresswoman Mia Love at just 50 years old, following a battle with brain cancer.
Yes, this is a significant loss. Congresswoman Love was a truly groundbreaking figure in American politics. She made history as the first black Republican woman elected to the U.S. Congress,
Right, from Utah.
representing Utah's 4th District. She was also the first Haitian American elected to Congress, serving in a state with a very small black population, which really underscores the unique nature of her achievement.
Her background is quite remarkable, too. Born in Brooklyn, raised in Connecticut, moved to Utah in '98, had a career with Continental Airlines before even getting into politics.
Right. She built her political career from the local level up in Utah. Saratoga Springs City Council, its first female member, then mayor of Saratoga Springs, for several years before Congress.
And politically, her trajectory was interesting, wasn't it? She got national attention at the 2012 RNC
Mm-hmm. The convention speech.
and arrived in Congress during the height of the Tea Party movement. But despite her Republican affiliation, she also became a member of the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah, which showed a willingness to engage across different lines politically and ideologically.
And even after Congress, she stayed a prominent voice, often on CNN as a commentator, and she was known for expressing skepticism towards some elements of Mad J Republicanism.
Right. It's also important to remember her personal struggle with glioblastoma, that aggressive brain cancer diagnosed in early 2022. She enrolled in an immunotherapy clinical trial in August 2023. And then the difficult announcement came earlier this month that further treatment wasn't working anymore.
So sad.
Yeah. The statement from her family on social media conveyed a real sense of peace, though, and gratitude for her life and impact. She passed away peacefully at home, surrounded by loved ones. She survived by her husband, Jason, and their 3 children. It's certainly a time to reflect on her contributions.
Absolutely. A significant figure. Okay, finally, let's turn our attention to a developing story concerning voting rights. California Secretary of State Shirley Weber has issued a strong condemnation of President Trump's recently enacted executive order on federal election processes.
Yes, this executive order, issued March 25th, is definitely generating significant controversy and opposition. Secretary Weber drew a really stark comparison, didn't she, equating it to discriminatory practices before the Voting Rights Act of 1965.
Wow, that's a strong comparison.
It really highlights the depth of her concern about its potential impact on voting access. She called it a calculated and dramatic assault on every American's right to vote.
Okay, so what are the key provisions here? One mandates that states must reject any ballots not physically received by Election Day.
Exactly, and that directly clashes with existing California law, which allows mail-in ballots postmarked by Election Day to arrive up to 7 days later and still be counted.
And mail-in voting is huge in California, right?
It is. Nearly 81% of votes cast in California in the 2024 general election were mail-in. So this federal directive could have a very substantial impact on how elections are run and votes are counted there.
What else is in the order?
Another significant piece is the requirement for the Federal Election Assistance Commission, the EAC, to add proof of citizenship as a mandatory part of the National Voter Registration Form.
Proof of citizenship to register.
Yes. And states that don't comply could potentially lose federal funding for election administration. This raises concerns because, as the reporting notes, about 1 in 10 adult U.S. citizens might not have readily available proof of citizenship documentation.
So that could be a real barrier for some people trying to register.
Potentially, yes.
President Trump's rationale centers on concerns about ballot counting integrity since 2020, right? And ending what he calls unfair voting practices. He said his aim is to straighten out our elections.
That's the stated rationale. However, voting rights advocates are expressing serious concerns that these new requirements could disproportionately disenfranchise low-income Americans and create, unnecessary hurdles for eligible citizens.
And there's something about empowering new departments, DOGE.
Right. The Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, and the Department of Homeland Security are potentially empowered by the order to subpoena states to review their voter rolls.
Subpoena states for voter rolls. That seems like a big federal step into state election territory.
It's quite significant. Secretary Weber rightly points out that this whole initiative seems based on the widely debunked myth of massive non-citizen voting.
And California isn't alone in opposing this, right, Senator Padilla?
Correct. Senator Alex Padilla, who used to be California's Secretary of State, has also strongly condemned it, calling it illegal and lacking authority. Plus, there's a widespread expectation that the Election Assistance Commission itself might resist complying.
Interesting. So the EAC might not even do it.
It's possible. It's interesting to note the parallels being drawn between this order and the SVE Act, Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, which failed in Congress previously.
Oh.
And the data consistently shows non-citizen voting is exceedingly rare. The Brennan Center for Justice, for instance, found very few credible instances after the 2016 election out of tens of millions of votes. It really casts doubt on the justification being offered for this order.
Well, there you have it. In this deep dive, we've covered quite a range, haven't we? From the economic and social fallout of corporate DEI changes to a potentially huge shift in how American history gets presented nationally. That inspiring story of T.J. Simpson's community engagement.
Yeah, that was a good one.
The passing of a pioneering figure like Mia Love, and this contentious new federal policy impacting voting rights.
And what's really key to take away, I think, is the interconnectedness of these seemingly separate events. Each story, in its own way, reflects these ongoing dialogues and shifts in our society, our culture, our politics.
Absolutely. We really encourage you to think about the potential ripple effects.
Yeah.
The consequences of these trends. How might shifts in corporate DEI practices influence your own consumer choices or the broader marketplace?
Right.
What are the long-term implications of altering how our national museums interpret history?
Yeah.
And how might changes to voting laws shape civic participation and the democratic process itself? These are all really important questions as these stories keep developing.
Which leads to, I guess, a final thought for you to consider this week. As you reflect on how these different stories intersect, the corporate world responding to social pressures, the government shaping national narratives, individuals trying to make a difference locally, and these ongoing debates about fundamental rights like voting, what single overarching tension or driving force do you believe is most powerfully shaping the current landscape right now?
That's a deep one.
It is. It's definitely something to contemplate as you navigate the week ahead.